Will Leach, how'd you like my piano playing there?
Man, you're getting so much better every week. You're adding another chord to this thing. I think eventually we're gonna have a song here written by you. It sounds great. It sounded great. It was kind of ominous at first, but then it got me into a space of like knowledge, desire, and so it was everything I think anyone would want out of an hour with me, and starting it off with a couple of minutes with you. I love it.
Well, shucks, thanks. So I have a question for you, Will.
Uh-oh.
Do you wear house shoes, or did you put on shoes and socks for this episode?
Holy cow. I love that you said that, because I am actually most times house shoes here. For Christmas, I got 3 pairs. We talked about that, right? These big 3 pairs of socks. And I got the gold toe socks. I'm really excited about those. Today, I drove Nicholas to school, which means I'm wearing my boots. Yeah. So normally I am totally big, fluffy sock guy. That's my one outlet, man. That's my one outlet here.
Well, I realize that I do most of my work now, and these were from my son.
Yeah,
they're super comfortable. But yeah, if you got to get in the car, you can't wear your house shoes unless.
Yep. I'm wearing the boots today. I'm wearing the boots, but normally I don't, man. That's one of the nice benefits of working from home. It's funny you said that, because I've been thinking about in like client meetings, just everybody just forced, just like you said, everybody right now, what are you wearing? But then, that can get a little awkward too, seeing people's feet and stuff. So I don't know if I'm ready for that, but I thought about that. I thought about that as an icebreaker to most meetings. Haven't done it yet. You were pretty ballsy to do that today.
So you're listening to the Mindstate Marketing Hour with Will Leach. He's the author of one of my favorite books, Marketing to Mind States. That's right. And I like to say this book is how to use science for good to connect with your clients. But guess what we're talking about today? We're talking about how to use mimicking to connect better with I'm looking for the title, using mimicking to win customers, trust, and business. Hence the house shoe question.
I like that. It was a nice setup there, my friend. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Mimicking, it's this idea of matching your customer's disposition. And I learned about this actually years ago for the first time when I first started Trigger Point, and the importance of doing this. So I don't know if you know this, Steve, but when I first started Trigger Point in year 2, I decided I wanted to go agency side. Oh, what a nightmare.
Smart.
I tried it and I was like, not for me. Because I found it's a tough business on the agency side. Being a consultant, I get to just talk about ideas. Agency guys, you guys have to do work. So, but I went in that space, and we had so I had to find a creative director, copywriter, etc. And I just so happened to hit it off with this guy, local guy, and our personalities were awesome. Like, we just connected. First time ever meeting him. Was the day before actually going to a major client, flying to a major client and pitching a deal. And we got to know each other, went there, pitched the deal, flew back. We won the deal. So my first time, my first ever pitch on the agency side, yes, we won this deal. And we were going to do some major work with them, right? So, and the way we did, we just connected in the office when we were talking to this client, and just everything was going great. So about 3 weeks later, he invites me, this guy, my creative director, invites me to lunch. Now, this guy had his own company. He just started his own shop, really small shop. And we go to lunch, and I'm like excited about this thing. I don't know where we're meeting. I'm just, friends. And I remember he got it. I said, man, I think it's time now. We got to get this thing in writing. Let's fill out a contract right now to join our businesses. And as much as I love this guy, he had said he already met with his lawyer. This way we're going to do it. He had set up all these terms, and he caught me off guard by doing that. And what happened was it wasn't like an aggressive, like mean aggressive, but it was an aggressive move on me, because he had never prepped me. And you know me, I'm a little bit more introverted. Like I'm a bit pessimistic with business. And when he did that, it caused me to kind of pull back a little bit. And I remember not finding the words, right? Because he's my friend, but I didn't know what to say the words. I said, I got to talk to Melanie. I got to talk to Melanie about it. And I just want to get out of there as fast as I could. And he wasn't doing anything wrong, but his disposition, his style was, let's go do this. Let's get this company. We just won a major account, our first pitch. This behavioral science thing is amazing. Let's consummate the deal with a contract where he was going to take 40% of the business, the whole thing. And I remember walking away feeling like really kind of mistrust. I don't know why. I was just like, this doesn't feel right. Why was this guy so aggressive on this? And because of that, I remember reflecting, the same person 2 weeks ago when we were out in Virginia together, winning business, I loved. And in this one moment, I lost trust in him, not because of anything he said, but his style and the way he approached me. And then through that, I thought, I wonder what would have happened if he read the situation better, if he knew me a little bit better and understood that I need, for something as major as that, you got to kind of ease me into it. Steve, you eased me into remember we talked about this, you eased me into your company. And if he would have gone just a slightly slower, we may have a totally different company right now. And so that's what I want to get you guys to think about out there on LinkedIn land, is that, or on YouTube, or anyone's watching this, right, is your disposition matters a lot. And you just want to be thoughtful. I'm going to teach you a very simple way to do it, but being thoughtful about how you interact with your clients or your hope to be soon client can matter a lot with whether they trust you or not.
You were saying, so usually I'm introverted and I need to, you were describing the cautious achievement.
That's right.
State of mind. And he missed that very important point.
That's right. He did. And because of that, through his just natural personality, he lost the business. And we were together through that project, and then we never worked again because I actually pulled away because I never recovered from that moment, and he tried to come back. He was always like, well, the lawyer wants to know when we're going to do this. And I was kind of pausing it because I didn't want to, screw up our relationship. We had a big client we just landed, and we never recovered from that, man. It was from one lunch, but he didn't read the situation really well. So yeah, it matters, man. It matters.
I tell you, so I've thought about this a lot, that you can have all these great conversations, sales conversations, and it's totally logical why they should sign up with you, do what you're wanting, but they don't. And I've always, done a debrief later, and I'm like, what did I miss there? And it was something I call illogical, but it was highly important. And it was the state of mind and how that they were feeling. They didn't feel, for whatever about that, when we can analyze yours, but you didn't feel safe with that. I was like, wait a minute, where'd this come from? We needed to date longer than just get married.
Yep. No, it's a great point. Remember, guys, we make emotional decisions and post-rationalize them with evidence, with something to make us feel better about our emotions. In this case, he didn't read the emotion, and I couldn't figure out the post-rationalization of why I should do this. He caused me, fear a bit without even realizing, certainly some anxiety. And so remember, you are first an agent of emotion, and you have to read your client's emotion and emotional states. And when you do that, you can build great trust. Or when you don't do that well, and I'll tell you some funny stories about times when I haven't done that so well, where I've lost trust even with my own customers because I didn't even kind of eat my own food, if you will.
So when you say, I love this statement, you are first an agent of emotion. Help me connect what agent means in this.
Yeah. The point here is that we like to think of ourselves, all of us in business and in life, as kind of rational, thoughtful beings that are constantly in tune with what's important to us, what makes us tick, what are our beliefs. And we're kind of always thinking through all of our decisions. But what if I told you that you make 35,000 decisions on any given day, like 35,000, over 6,000 food decisions, research has shown, are made by you every single day. I know that doesn't make any sense, but it's shown that it actually is true. When you think of yourself as trying to do cost-benefit analyses of 600 or 6,000 food decisions on a day, you're not doing that. So what are you doing? You're using emotions to help you navigate the day. That's what I mean by being an agent of emotion. You are primarily being run and driven by your emotions. And then you post-rationalize how you're feeling and the decision you made emotionally with some sort of evidence, so that if somebody was to question you, or if your conscious self wants to better understand why you made the decision, you have rational reasons to do that. That's why we say that marketing has to both be emotional and rational. You have to have both, I think, in most marketing. In most marketing, you got to have both.
So if we're using mimicking to win customers and trust.
That's right.
So if I'm like watching how you said, if I'm trying to focus and mimic your body language or whatever, I'm exiting the emotional part of the conversation talking. So if we're focused on those things, it makes them feel weird. And
that's right. So this is a common thing that I've heard in sales all the time, that when I'm sure you've heard, when your customer folds their hands and backs up, you should do the same thing. If they're smiling, they're smiling. If you're scratching your head, you should be mimicking them from a physical. I am telling you right now that is creepy. And not only is that creepy, but there's nothing in the behavioral sciences that says that that's really works. I'm sure it works on accident, but when you try to replicate results like that from the behavioral sciences literature, replicating the physical mannerisms of somebody doesn't work. It doesn't show that it's consistently working at all. So don't get caught up in that whole thing of trying to wear the same color tie as what your client is wearing, or kind of doing their same mannerisms, because we're actually, remember, creatures of emotion, Steve. Like your body, remember when we were kids and then somebody's copying you, and all of a sudden you pick up on it, you get mad, you're stop. I didn't say it. Yes, you did. Or, no, I didn't say that. And then you're going through this whole thing. It's the same thing, but as adults, we don't say it, but we know that we're being copied. So mannerisms, don't do that. There's nothing that shows in the behavioral science literature that it really works. If you think it works, it probably happened on accident. So don't do physical mannerisms. The second thing I don't want you ever to do is trying to mimic the personality of the person as well. Disposition is different than a personality. So, because that's also very weird. So let me give you an example of when it's awkward, man, but I'll tell you the story of when I tried to mimic, if you will, the personality of somebody, and it just bombed. So a couple of years ago, I was asked to do a conference, a big conference, to speak on stage and talk about Mindstate Marketing. So the night before the conference, there's this speaker dinner where they brought all the speakers together. And this was a marketing conference. It was on digital marketing. And Steve, I'm going to show my age here. I had to have been 4 times the average age of anyone there. It was embarrassing. I remember, I'm not going to tell you the conference because I thought it was a great conference, but one of the speakers looked all of like 21, maybe 22, and was drunk on stage. But it was somehow at this conference, it was cool because it was digital marketing. Anyways, so I go to this dinner and it's all these young people and they're in the digital space, they're all cool. And they've got their long beards, the whole thing. So I remember sitting there and I actually went to go sit and I sat by myself because there was 2 tables. And I was that awkward guy who had to start the next table, because I was right in the middle, right? So I had to start the next table. So I felt awkward anyways. And I was trying to fit in. So I remember I took off my jacket and I rolled up my sleeves and I untucked my shirt because I was trying to figure out a way to, look. It's terrible, man, right? So I remember this guy comes over and he owns this massive company. I won't name the name of the company, massive company that was hosting the entire show. And he's asking me about Mindstate Marketing. He loved the book, wanted to learn more about it. And I remember that I was asking him about what he does. And I remember saying this, something to this point, like, yo, man, what you do is amazing, man. And I remember he looked at me and he was probably in his mid-20s. I'm sure he's multimillionaire or whatever. And I remember that weird look of when he just looked at me like, what are you doing? And I remember literally, I felt so stupid. And so I remember I got up from the table, we had he was very nice about it, whatever, but I knew that I had overstepped my bounds in going into his world and trying to pretend like I'm like him and using his words, his mannerisms, and trying to talk about technology. I had no idea. And I remember when I was trying to talk about his technology and I could tell that he was being really nice to me, but he could tell I knew nothing about what he was doing. Mm-hmm. And so I remember walking out, it was raining, it was in the Pacific Northwest and it was cold. And I remember walking out with my jacket. And I remember thinking to myself, that was so dumb because what he wanted from me is to be myself. He was coming to me because he wanted to learn about me and my personality. And what I did was I thought I needed to figure out who he was and his personality. And everything was fine. But I remember thinking to myself how awkward that was for him because I was trying so hard to look and feel like him. So don't mimic people's mannerisms and don't try to mimic their personality or anything like that, because it comes across as disingenuous. And of course, we can pick up that emotionally. When people are being disingenuous, that we actually most times can tell. We may not be able to identify why, but there's just something off with them. And so I walked away from that saying, man, we have to do better at really trying to, initiate. And what I would say, the last thing I'll say on this, Steve, is sometimes they say, well, just be yourself. Just be yourself. That's not good either. I almost said the guy's name. The guy who lost his trust thing, he was being himself. And he lost out on a major deal. So I don't think it's just always being yourself. It's understanding being yourself, but knowing your customer and their disposition to business and just either toning yourself down or toning yourself up, but just modifying slightly your own personality and your own quirks to better fit with how this person's disposition is in business.
I got embarrassed you telling that story. No, I'm giggling because you were still in that zone where you could almost still be cool there, but I love your story. I'm past the deal where it's like, Steve, you don't have any hope, so I'm calm.
You are
right. But when you talk about the secret is mimicking your customer's natural disposition in business, help me get more clarity on what's natural disposition.
Yeah. So there's only going to be two natural dispositions that everybody has in business, right? And the first one is, in my book, we call it the optimistic. They're optimistic in nature, but these people are eager, right? So in business, imagine that person in business who is a little bit more eager with wanting to do business, a little bit more open with their personal life. They are going to be more open to ambiguity. They like the excitement of the deal. So these people are just optimistic in nature, friendlier in nature, eager to get to the next place with you, etc. So when somebody has a natural disposition in this way, they love bigger ideas. They love for you to follow up with them and say, hey, I got an idea I want to run past you, right? Because ideas matter a lot with somebody who's in that optimistic, eager disposition in business. So that is the first one you have to kind of naturally know a little bit about. The second one is equally as important. There are other people, and this is a little bit more like me, who's a little bit more cautious in the book. We talk about being cautious and reserved when it comes to business. It doesn't matter about their personality. It's about when it comes to business. So this type of person is going to be asking more questions of you, especially when they first meet you. They're going to want you to be more methodical with them. They don't like to have surprises. Maybe when you first were trying to pitch business, they're going to ask for a lot more case studies and give me more proof points and case studies and literature so I can feel more comfortable with you. For the most part, it's not because they're actively looking to read all that stuff, Steve. So I don't think most people read all those case studies, but it's the sheer fact that you have case studies, that you have literature, that you have documents that look professional and that are very kind of methodically built. It provides a sense of comfort for somebody who's a little bit more cautious and a little bit more reserved. So those are the two natural styles in business. And you need to identify which, or maybe it's where on the spectrum somebody is, and try to match that. This guy who sat me down for lunch was very much optimistic and eager. He wanted to build a business with me. He was excited about this. I'm more reserved with my business, a little bit more cautious. And so when he went after me and tried to kind of do this optimistic and eagerness and let's sign the deal, my lawyer, he'd already had conversations with the lawyer. And that's the part that got me. That was the part that was weirdest to me, that he was already talking about our business with a lawyer without ever approaching the idea with me. He goes, well, it's just what we all do in agencies. This is what you do. You get the documents sent out, we sign it, and we go make a bunch of money. If he would have known that I was a little bit more cautious and reserved, he never would have had that conversation with me. Certainly wouldn't have told me that he was meeting with others about my business. Would never have done that.
Wow. Yeah. So what are some of it would seem obvious, but even I miss it sometimes. But if I'm talking to someone that's optimistic and eager, and as a potential client, I'm more cautious and reserved. I struggle a little bit to connect with them, to be the optimistic and eager and overpromise a little bit, or, I struggle in that area. So what are some of the signs that we can look for? Because sometimes I see something and I don't trust my initial, is it too simple that he's optimistic and eager? What are some things I can look for to confirm that?
Yeah. So first of all, I like where you went is you said that there's a gut feel, or there's something. I think you should trust your gut feel. Now, I think what you have to do is be methodical in when you're talking, especially when you first get to know your client or a prospect, to sit there and say, is this person eager and optimistic or cautious and reserved? So you should have that kind of, just put it on a Post-it note and just take notes, or kind of in your mind, think about this. Your intuition is going to tell you. It really is. Now, it may not be perfect. I'm not expecting this person is only cautious. There's going to be a different level, right? Or a balance, right? Some people are going to, kind of show you both sides of them, but use your gut feel first, because your gut feel and your intuition is the best signal of whether somebody is reserved or whether somebody is really open to new ideas. The second trick I've done, actually, Steve, is this. Especially on very early calls, before we get to know each other, open yourself up a bit and talk about maybe a personal story or your personal life. Now, I think when you and I first met, I didn't do that initially. It took a little bit of time, right? Mm-hmm. So let's say if you would have talked about, hey, my kid or whatever, talked about, where do you live? Tell me about that. Tell me about your life. And I would have rejected that probably. We're not ready to do that, right? Mm-hmm. So you would have known, if I would have tried to push the subject fast or did the arbitrary, well, I'm married with a child and I live in Dallas. If that's all I talked about, that would probably show you, it'd be a very first signal of he's a little bit more cautious. He's waiting to see whether I've earned that trust so I can open up about my real life. So I think a really important thing to do if you are trying to struggle with that is ask or open up your own life where you feel comfortable with Steve, and that's be comfortable for you, and see if they take that bait and open themselves up. If they open themselves up and talk a little bit more about their life, especially if they use the first name of their family. You see how I talk about Melanie now and Nicholas, do you? Mm-hmm, first time we ever talked, I'll tell you, I never did that, man. I never would have done that. I would have talked about my wife and my child. I wouldn't have given first names. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't until I used first names, that's when you kind of know, okay, we're starting to build this trust. And so he's moving away from being reserved, and he's more open to kind of, or I'm kind of swinging a little bit more into that optimistic, eager stage. So then a second thing I do, so initial conversation, 2 Post-it notes, open myself up a little bit, talk about my personal life, see if there's any reciprocity. The last thing that I could tell you to do before just trusting your gut feel was, how much evidence are they asking from you to prove that you should do business together? Again, it's the case study idea. Now, if this person's eager and you're eager as well, and you guys are connecting, they're going to be oftentimes less needy of, I need to have some references. I need to have a couple of case studies. Where can I learn more about you? All that kind of stuff. They're going to be less needy of that. Now, if this person's more reserved, they're going to ask for that stuff. Again, not necessarily because they're going to read all of it, but it's the sheer fact that you have people who will talk about your business in a positive light, that you have references, that you have case studies of somebody like me. That makes somebody who's a little more cautious in nature and reserved feel like, yep, you're kind of like me. You have these things ready to go when needed. So when they first start asking for that very first pitch or whatever, if they're asking for a lot of things, it's not perfect in every case, but if they're asking for a lot of details, mm-hmm. that's a signal that they're cautious. They're trying to feel whether or not you are worthy, I guess, of their business.
Wow. While you're talking, I was thinking, how cool would it be if you had proposal documentation that one is the optimistic, eager version, and one is the cautious and reserved version. What would that look like? What would an optimistic, eager version of proposal paperwork look like?
Yep. So the first thing I would do in that paperwork is talk about how we are going to build it together. Mm-hmm. Like, I wouldn't come back with the exact answer. If somebody's eager and optimistic, they oftentimes are looking to co-build. They want to take the best ideas from everybody. So I would be less specific about the process I will take you from A to B, and talk about, yeah, there's a process, but we're going to work together to modify it for you. Somebody who's more cautious and reserved, Steve, is less open to this idea of ambiguity, right? They're a little more cautious. So they're going to be more likely to say, I want to know how step 1 gets me to step 2, step 3, step 4. And of course, they have a chance to modify it, but I would not talk a lot about us building it together. Having a system in place will help somebody who feels a little more cautious feel more comfortable with you. The second thing I would do if I was an optimistic is I would talk about the vision first. Like, here's the ultimate vision I think working with me and us together will get us to. And I would be focused on that optimal vision in the future, where if I was cautious, I would quickly talk about that, but I would start, let's say it was a 5-year. In 5 years, I'm going to grow your business 20x. I would say in 5 years, 20x, but now let's talk about year 1. Because somebody who's cautious wants to know and get into the details and doesn't want to think so much about 5 years out. They want to know within the first year. So I would be thinking about more or less, if I was optimistic and trying to talk to that person, very focused on the ultimate vision of us working together and the end result, wherever that end result is, whether it's 6 months from now or 6 years from now. And the last thing I think I would do on a proposal is I would give different options and then different alternatives to working with me. Again, somebody who's optimistic and eager, they want to put their skin in the game. They're going to want to be, they're more open to new ideas. They want to build things together. So you can't be so rigid and say, this is the only process. You could say, here's a recommended process, but we have options for people like you who blank, blank, blank. Mm-hmm. So I think in my proposals, I would let them very much kind of feel that they are also a little bit in control of this, that we're going to be doing this together. I can bring my best ideas out to get us to a great place. The other side, the cautious and reserved, I'd be less open to that. I would be saying, we have 3 options. Here are the 3 options, A, B, and C. And it's okay to recommend maybe an option, but I don't think I'd give them this customization idea. I wouldn't be focused as much on that. So like I said, I don't know if it's, I think it's about emphasis, Steve, of, are you going to emphasize the big vision or not emphasize it? I think it's about where you place emphasis. And I could totally see a proposal being slightly different for one versus the other.
What would you do as far as images? Would you use more images in the optimistic, eager version, less images? How would you coach someone in the image or the creative side of that?
Yeah, so images, I think, you need images throughout. Even images will still make somebody feel who, if they're cautious and maybe reserved, the images would still be meaningful to them. It's the types of images you would use. So we know from regulatory fit theory, in the book, in the work that I do in the book around approach, is that if you are optimistic and you're eager, images that have expansive viewpoints, meaning I use this example of sky and open fields, right? Because what happens is when you see expansive settings in an image, your mind, if you're this eager person, will start to imagine themselves into this space and create what their vision is. Right. So I always use things like expansive skies. I use things around like showing energy, like a sun, or showing energy move from the middle of an object out from left to right, blue skies. I would even say go so far as not framing your visual, Steve. Framing, actually, the actual corners, having corners on a frame is actually for people. It would be better for that type of person who's in that cautious state of mind. So having corners, this idea of cardinal orientation, would actually be more useful for somebody in that cautious, kind of reserved. So let's go to cautious reserved. You say, if you know your guy is cautious, or the girl that you're trying to sell to is cautious and reserved, your images are going to be different. You want to have not expansive images. You want to have focused images on very specific things. So let's say if it was your process, you want to be very focused on that process, eliminate any background images. So they're focused on just the process you're laying out. Or if somebody's more cautious, you want to focus in on a specific moment of an action is taking place, whatever that action is, versus showing the background. So focus matters for somebody who's cautious. They don't want to see all the ambiguity behind them. They don't want to see, kind of this space. So even the space right now that you're looking at, it's not really focused on me. You see books over this side, over here. You see my Gandalf the Grey right here. You see pictures of my family. Optimistic, right? But if you came in a little bit closer and we're doing a visual like this would make somebody who's cautious feel more comfortable with you.
And so for optimistic, eager, then we're going to have more open expanse. We're going to have things that help us envision us successful or achieving in the future.
That's right. And the entire environment and what that achievement will bring to somebody, right? So if somebody's in an optimistic and eager state of mind, they want to see all the kind of the openness, because they will start imagining themselves in that moment and taking, where you see my books, their books. I know it sounds so funny, but psychologically, somebody's eager, they will start filling in the details, but they need space to fill in the details. That's why you use expansiveness, because they will fill in that open space with their desires, with their aspirations, things like that. Somebody who's cautious does not desire that kind of space. So you want to be much more focused.
I love that. We're talking with Will Leach. This is the Mindstate Marketing Hour, and Will's the author of Marketing Mindstates by Will Leach. And we're learning how to actually use science to connect better with our clients. And so today we're just learning more about how we can connect with our customers by understanding their professional disposition.
Yeah. And let me quickly talk about, I know you said in creative, but imagine, I think it's in all touch points, right? So imagine if you now know that your client, you think they're a little more cautious, and you think that they're a little bit more reserved. So imagine how your emails would look if you understood that this person is a little more cautious in the way that they do business, right? So you would start thinking about, okay, when I write an email, I'm going to be a little more kind of professional, maybe than other times. You would lay out things like, you make sure that your emails are very easy to scan and that they lay out processes. So you'd say, hi, Jim, just reconfirming that it was important for us to capture notes from our meeting. Here are the objectives, bullet point those objectives. Here's the next steps, bullet point those next steps. So in your emails, you'd give much more detail, and you'd also be very you'd have a framework of helping him think through what's going on. So you start off with, here's what the email's about. Here are the objectives of the meeting. Here's what the outcomes were of that meeting. Or imagine a phone call when you're going to talk to this person. You would probably be less open, or they're less open to hearing about how their weekend was. So I don't think I've ever talked about this. I worked for a number of years on Sabra, the business, and Sabra is owned by an Israeli company. And so I would fly to Brooklyn, is where they're headquartered at the time. I think they still are. And their executive leadership team were Israeli. And so I noticed very quickly when first 2 weeks I came up there, I would try, it was a Monday morning, I flew in on Sunday nights, and we'd set up on our executive call or executive meeting. And I would try to open up things like, hey, how's everybody weekend or whatever. And I could tell by the second time I did that they weren't open to that. Not making them bad. It was the fact that we're in a business meeting, we should be talking about business. When we have social meetings, that's when we talk about our family. And it took me about 2 weeks of knowing, okay, their disposition is very business oriented. And so therefore it does me no good, because they want to move into business. So the idea of your phone calls would be the same way, or starting a meeting with that person is be less open to wanting to talk about weekends. Like, nowadays, I sometimes have calls for 10 or 15 minutes with clients talking only about family because of COVID. And, especially everyone want to talk about how they're feeling or whatever. So that can happen sometimes. Other people want to really get that kind of quick conversation done with in the first minute and get on to business. It's not because they're being rude. It's because their natural disposition is to get into the business side of things and to go and they're a little bit more reserved. And then in your follow-ups, right? So you could set up your emails like that, your calls, and in your follow-ups, you always want to follow up with somebody if they're more cautious in nature, or, if they are reserved. You want to over-communicate to somebody in that state of mind. We're saying, hey, I just want to make sure I got your email. I'll reply to you within 12 hours. If somebody's in that eager space, they don't want you to say, I'll reply to you in 12 hours. Like, give me your initial thought. I'm okay with it not being perfect. I just want I want to know that we're building something together. We're both eager to get to the next place. We're both kind of optimistic of working together. So in this case, you just want to rattle off something. It's okay not to have perfect spelled words. It shows that your personality is out there and that you're building something together. So a very different thing. In your phone calls, you'd be much more open about, how was your weekend? What are you thinking about right now about our business together? You'd be much more open and personal and talking about how we are going to get to a better place together. So that's a great way of thinking about, how do I approach this phone call? How do I approach my meeting? How do I approach my emails to make sure that it just feels natural to your client's disposition?
On an unrelated topic, but being open and eager here, LinkedIn seems to be the one channel we have the most trouble connecting with. The times that we go live, often it connects, but every once in a while it doesn't. So LinkedIn, if you're listening, come on, man.
That's right. Come on. We could really use some help here. I'm telling you, I'm with you. They'll get their act together.
So I love the comment. You are first an agent of emotion. There are businesses, there are only business dispositions to mimic. They're optimistic and eager, cautious and reserved. I really like how we've talked about utilizing this mindset in our communications, our proposals, our website materials. What are some other things that we haven't thought about? What are some other domains that we would apply this?
Wow, it's a great point. I think, I guess it depends on what your business is, but think about every touch point where your client or your potential customer is trying to get a better feel for you usually before they do business with you. Because once you start doing business with you, build trust, and then disposition doesn't matter as much. So I think it's those early funnel stages, I think, is the best way to think about how do you try to map or match your dispositions together. I think it's probably in the earlier funnel stages. I think after a couple of different business transactions, it all just kind of works itself out. So even if you're doing lead generation, if you're doing initial outbound sales, it's probably really useful in those outbound sales calls to try to figure out the disposition of the person on the other line as quickly as possible, so that on your follow-up calls or whatever, that you're kind of matching that disposition and not your mannerisms, but your style and your approach to that person.
So would this be an example of a topic that we would learn about in your Mindstate marketing programs for small businesses?
It absolutely is. Yes, we are launching 3 of these new Mindstate marketing programs for small businesses. Our very first program is called our Starter Pack. And that starter pack is a chance for you, if you're not really sure about Mindstate marketing yet, or you're new to behavioral sciences, you want to step kind of your foot into the water without fully committing, there's a starter package waiting for you where you get access to our book and workbooks and digital files that allow you to kind of do it yourself at your own pace. Our second program is called our Masterclass. And our Masterclass is going to give you about 12 hours worth of video content where we're going to show you how we applied Mindstate marketing to a real business called Wicked Crisps. And we built this business from the ground up. So you'll learn all these topics that we talk about in the book. Disposition is kind of one of those topics we talk about as well, but we do it in a very methodical way. It's that you can go step by step for as long as you need to and come back, because you have lifetime access to these videos. You have the ability to go back when needed to review an old course to get even better at it. That's our Masterclass option. And our third option is the partnership program. And that is a chance where you get all the Masterclass stuff. You get lifetime access to the video. But in the partnership program, you actually get a live workshop with me and my team where we go through and we identify these things, not for the brand I worked on, we do it for your brand. So we go through the whole process working with you and your team to identify people's mind states, your customers' mind states, their disposition, and then bring you through a process to understand how do you better communicate with those people to get them to listen, care, and act on your messaging. So it gives you different levels of interactions with me. And you have in that partnership program, there's a whole year where you're going to have every month calls with me and my team to help you, modify your marketing, do audits on your marketing if we need to, or just pick my brain on how to grow your company. So those are the 3 new programs. And it's because the passion for small businesses, getting this information out to small businesses, because small little tweaks, Steve, small little tweaks to your messaging and your approach to people and your business can make a really big difference if they're kind of rooted in emotion.
So you can get all the details at the mindstategroup.com. Now, these are live. Is that correct?
They are live in about a day. So in about a day, God willing. Right now you can buy some of the stuff, but on the website, we're all still trying to figure all this, map it all back, but it should be up and running by tomorrow. So if you wanted to see it today, guys, reach right out right now. Go to mindstategroup.com or find my email address and reach out to me, and I'll show you specifically where to find it. But as of tomorrow, it's all going to be out there on our resources page. So it'll either be tonight or tomorrow.
So, Will, you're pretty active on LinkedIn. That would be a great place if they had some individual questions to ping you there and message you on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm on there multiple times a day. So yeah, come to LinkedIn, connect with me, shoot me a quick message, and I can tell you kind of what makes sense for you. Because sometimes certain programs may not make sense. I'm really good at identifying the perfect program for you, and I'll just lead you in the right direction.
So is it their job to tell you, hey, if they've been listening to this, they come to you via LinkedIn, they message you, do they need to declare whether they're optimistic and eager or cautious and reserved? Or is that your job? Are you going to be able to identify
that? That is my job. The entrepreneur should be taking these things into consideration to build that emotional connection. That's my job, baby, not yours.
Will, I learned so much and have fun on these. We're doing these Mindstate Marketing Hours every week at the same time, Thursdays at 11 Central. I'm Steve Brown, the co-host, and we've been learning from Will Leach. He's the author of Marketing to Mindstates, How to Use Science to Connect with Your Clients. Will, one more thing, man. So you're going to have a new version or an updated version, revision. What do we call this? The unabridged? What do we call this of your book?
We didn't want to call it a new edition because there's legal ramifications on that, Steve. So basically, it's an updated book with all the information from 2018 to 2020, new information that's coming. So Marketing to Mindstates is going to there's some revamped pages in there, new information, and a new cover. And so right now it's going through the editing process, and I expect that we're going to have a nice big announcement. You know how the companies are. It's like 6 to 8 weeks, but basically 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to have a brand new Marketing to Mindstates that's available. And I got to get that out the door because my next book, Selling to Mindstates, is going to start. We're going through the writing process right now, so we don't have much time. So we got to start selling to Mindstates, and that's going to be much more focused on small businesses, small business growth, and hopefully get these one-to-one interactions like you and I are having. How do you optimize the one-on-one interaction? So that's going to hopefully launch in 2020, end of 2021, I'm hoping, or very early next year.
Yeah. So, we've really had our status quo upended, and we're all having to learn how to conduct business and excel and be competitive in a totally different environment. And so these books really do give you a leg up. So if we went to mindstategroup.com, there's an area that we ought to set up, Will, where people can sign up to get on your notification list as soon as these are available.
Well, since you are my agency, then Steve, I want you to figure that out for me and put that link up there. So yeah, you just committed your team to doing that, but it's a great idea because it's coming out, especially even with the new information. That'll be 6 to 8 weeks, and then get on the list. Because what I will do, honestly, gosh, I think a great part of when I'm going to write the book, Selling to Mindstates, is reaching out to people like you and my people who are connected with me and ask them as we're going along, what do you think about this? Is this meeting your needs? Like, why wouldn't we crowdsource a book to make sure that it fits your needs? We have access, emails. If you give me your email, I can send this stuff over to you, give you kind of updates, have you actually read chapters. Why wouldn't you do that? Fill in, hey, Will, I think you should go in this direction. Great. Let's go crowdsource this thing. And then when it's out and running, you get probably a little blurb saying, thank you for your contributions. Like, you'd be a part of the book. So if you're interested in doing that, Steve will be setting up some sort of a page on my website so you can actually get notifications when this stuff is being written, and you get to build a book with me.
Awesome. I love that. And we'll get LinkedIn squared away as well. Yeah. So we'll start really setting up the steps. We're getting everybody excited because this is going to be an excellent book. I've gotten so much from it that's why we have these conversations every week. Will, as usual, this has been fun. You made me laugh. I learned some good stuff. I can see that I got some work to do on my proposal work. So I think I'm a little cautious and reserved.
Yeah,
actually.
You are. I think I'll be the judge of that, but I think you're right. I think you're cautious and reserved. So just got to remember that. And then how do you amplify that little more eagerness when you need to, or be just yourself when you don't? You and I both being cautious and reserved. That's why we have this kind of relationship we do.
Yeah. So, and by the way, so my attorneys and I, we were talking about some stuff. And
no. Don't ruin it. We got an idea for your new book. Yeah.
I got it. This great idea. Well, all these people have talked about. No. Will, we'll see you next week. Thanks, man. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. See you next week, everybody.
All right. And that's a wrap.